Hi, I'm Mark Reed. Follow me as I attempt to put my new book, Impact Culture, into practice and discuss it with others taking a similar journey. You'll get tips that will help you achieve more impact from your research and stay healthy, no matter how busy you are. Rediscover your purpose. Lead from behind to empower those around you. Transform your work culture. Welcome to Season 4 of the Fast Track Impact Podcast. So this week I am privileged to have Dr Ged Hall from University of Leeds on the podcast with me. Looking forward very much to this interview. Ged is an academic development consultant in charge of impact for University of Leeds, working with a large team of people there. I'm a visiting professor at Leeds. Worked with Ged when I was a lecturer, senior lecturer there, and have done ever since. Come back regularly. Ged has been a great support throughout the years. I have trialled courses in Leeds with Ged, gotten feedback on all of my books to date from Ged as well, helping kind of ground what I'm doing in reality. And I've had some really fascinating conversations with Ged as I've been both training with and developing my impact culture material. And in particular, Ged has pushed back on some of my kind of more bottom-up ideas as, well, Mark, yeah, great, but actually, how do you make this stuff happen in reality at the scale of an entire university? And of course, that is a scale that Ged is working at. That's where his head has been in parallel with me, and some of these conversations that I've had with Ged really influenced my own thinking, really gave me that challenge to say, could this actually work for Ged or for someone like Ged? And I'll let you decide, Ged, whether or not the stuff that you read in my book actually does work at your scale. But the focus of today's interview is going to be on some of the work that Ged has been pursuing at University of Leeds. And in particular, something called their Building Impact Momentum program, a grassroots strategy from the bottom up that is embedded within a bigger strategic change program, which is about trying to manage the university's impact portfolio. Now, if you want to delve into this in much more depth, you have the opportunity to join me and Ged in the next of our impact discussion groups. So we've got a training / discussion session coming up on the 25th of April at 10 o'clock in the morning, UK time. I'll put the link in the show notes to that. And I'm going to be doing a whole load of other stuff around what we can do to build potential impact capacity at institutional scales, drawing on stuff from my book, and then segueing into this case study and giving you a chance to interrogate Ged yourself. But for now, it's up to me to do that. So, Ged, do you want to say anything else by way of introduction? And as part of that, maybe give us a bit of context. Why did you think it was so important to build this program? What was the challenge you were trying to address?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good morning, and thanks for kicking off my imposter syndrome with such a lovely introduction. So I hope I deliver on everything that you've set out for here. So in terms of the context for where we are at the moment, a few years ago, before the pandemic, the university kind of realised that its culture around impact was very ref-driven. Essentially, case study authors might be supported with workload, all of those nice things. They might be supported with resource as well to kind of enable evaluation and all those sorts of things. But everybody else was kind of doing it either with the funding that they'd been able to secure in their grants or just in their spare time, and that the university decided just wasn't good enough from an institutional perspective. And I'd like to thank Nick Plant for kind of being the instigator of that. He's now our DVC for research and innovation. So we did a kind of consultation with the community across the university to kind of go, what are the issues here? What's what's going on? What do we need to do differently as an institution? And some of the things that kind of came out was there was lots of support for impact, but it had kind of grown organically across the university, and it wasn't really well connected. There were relationships across that network because we are impact professionals, so we know it's based on relationships, but it wasn't really tight across all those 100 or so people that are now in that community. So that's one thing we needed to change to grow that connectivity. The researchers, so when we talked to them, they gave us two kind of what felt like kind of mixed messages at the time. One, there's no support, and one, there's really valued support when it's used. So it's kind of like, we need to do something about that. We need to kind of make sure that the researchers understand where the support is, because when they access it, it's viewed really positively. And as I said, REF dominated the planning at all levels, from the institution right down to schools and right down to individual research groups. Can we get an impact case study out of this? Was the language that was going on. So that was kind of the context in terms of moving forward to build our impact strategy, which were called Engaged for Impact. So very much focusing on that kind of early stage stuff. And Alexa Ruppertsberg, my colleague that head of public engagement, came up with that title to kind of focus us in on it's the inputs to the thing that we need to manage, and hopefully the outcomes, the impacts will emerge as a result of that. So that's kind of the context for it.
Yeah, I think that whether you're listening from a UK context, this research excellence framework, or REF, as Ged is describing it, or any other research-intensive country that increasingly has its own way of measuring impact, or whether this is just your funders, and the extent to which funders increasingly now all over the world expect and demand impact. I think many of us have these external drivers that ultimately, when we look at the structures and also just the language, as Ged has said, around impact, that actually that's what's shaping what's going on. And when that is the case, then partly you might have this issue of just an incoherence, different people interpreting this in different ways in different parts of the university. But more problematically, this can become a very instrumental culture. It's about delivering for our funders, about getting that impact case study, and we begin to lose the sight of the humanity here. And so from knowing your work, Ged, that humanity, that relational approach has always been at the heart of your interactions with academics around impact. Why did you call this program Building Momentum? And tell us a bit more about what this is about.
Yeah, so building impact momentum. I mean, actually, what I can acknowledge as a weakness is coming up with really interesting titles for things. I tend to be a bit Ron Seal. So for those of you outside of the UK, if you come up with Ron Seal, it's a Ron Seal title. It's exactly what's on the tin. So the title that goes on the tin is exactly what is within the tin. So if you're building, if you are doing an impact session, you kind of go, look at all the things that are in that impact session, and then get a really stupidly long title that just essentially shortcuts all the learning outcomes that you're hoping for from that session. So I spent quite a little time kind of debating it with a really good friend and colleague of mine, Helen Morley, and Helen kind of came up with, well, we've got to be okay with you. We've got to follow your Ron Seal approach, and what is it that we're hoping the program will deliver? And actually, for the participants, we hope that it does open up space, open up a discussion, open up support to enable impact to be more of a priority. I'm not going to say the most important thing in that person's multiple identities as an academic, but opens up that space and therefore allows more time to be devoted to it. And hopefully that time translates into, actions and therefore the actions generate a sense of momentum. So that's why it's called building impact momentum. It's about, that's the aim for the whole program.
Fantastic. So Ronseal is a brand of paint, in case anyone, so a free advert for Ronseal, their catchphrase is, does exactly what it says on the tin. So it does what it says on the tin. It's building momentum. So the next question is how? What's the process? How does it work?
So the program is actually lasts approximately 3 months, so it roughly ties in with a kind of the historic standard term for a university year. So we do recruitment. We open it for a month just to recruit people. From that recruitment, we then put people into groups. So we played around with pairs, and then there's kind of there's a risk there if somebody can't make one of the sessions that you end up with somebody not being able to talk to their friend and colleague.
Okay, so we use threes. 2 people. Yeah, great.
Yeah, so we use threes now. So what we do with the decisions about threes is that we ignore the easy ways of doing it, like career stage, like what discipline they're from. So we really ask in the recruitment for them to tell us, what do you hope your impact might be? Just hope. What is it? Not what is it really? What have you actually done? Just what are your hopes? What are your hopes? Who do you hope to engage with? So we look at that text and go, what are the sensible ways of creating these threes? And we debate that backwards and forwards. We're nearly always 50% oversubscribed for every program. So we are able to do that. It's not kind of like we just have the 15 people. We only take 15 people onto the program to give them a really, rich experience as well. We do get some feedback from, there was one academic who went, how come you're only getting 15 people and I've got 300 people in a lecture theatre? And kind of, well, we're not doing lectures, so that's a big change in terms of the nature of the learning process.
To what extent, I wonder, Ged, in those statements about people's hopes, to what extent, as you're discussing these, do people's values kind of come into this, whether implicitly or if they've written explicitly about this, or is it more kind of outcome-driven, I want to do public engagement versus engage with a particular kind of industry?
So at the start of BIM, we really get them to focus in on not the activity, but the goal. What is the change that you personally want to see? So we don't, we don't put any influence over those. It's just, here's a question, you respond to it. This is your response. You own that. When we take people onto the program, before the program starts, we have one-to-ones with every participant, really to kind of get deep into what are their hopes. What are their hopes both in an impact sense, and what are their hopes and fears of the program, so that we can adjust. We also use that session, that one-to-one session, to kind of get a sense of where are they on the, I'm going to say journey. I can't think of another one that doesn't sound like a TV program. But where are they on that journey from hope to achievement? And what kind of reading or anything like that, have they read your book? Have they read literature that might have underpinned it? Have they read anybody else's writing around impact? To get a sense of the material that we might use. So we have a curriculum, and we have a kind of, if everybody comes in at a kind of early stage in that journey, then that the curriculum is set for that. If people are higher up, we can kind of go, right, we can drop that out. We can add something more complex in. We can do more peer-to-peer, things like that. So we can adjust as time goes by. When we get it, so there's work for each individual between that one-to-one and the first webinar, and then there's work between each of the webinars. They are done through a Microsoft team. So each threesome, I keep getting told off for using that word. Sorry, people have been telling me to use triad, so I'll use triad from now on. Each triad has a private channel in the Microsoft team that all the tutors can access, but just those 3 participants, and they can use that for their thinking in terms of just having debates between webinars with their peers, peers who have been put together because they have a shared either impact goal or stakeholder.
Brilliant. So I really love how tailored this is. What do you do when you've got a triad that has people of very, very different levels of experience at very different places in that journey? And to what extent do you tailor the webinars? So if you've got quite an experienced group on average, but a couple of newbies to impact, do you then kind of skip over the first stuff? To what extent can you tailor this, given that it's always going to be quite a mixed group?
Well, interestingly, probably most of the content is real content, kind of you need to learn this or understand this or have a look at this. Most of that content stuff is in the individual work.
Right.
So that's where we can really tailor. We can say, look, Mark, you've written books on impact, so you don't need to read your paper on impact because you wrote it. Now, where can we push you to really do, so thinking from your perspective, if you'd come on, decided to come on the program, I'd be kind of sat down with you in that one-to-one and going, where can we push you? Where's the thing that you think you need to work on over this 3-month period? And you have the permission and the support to work on that.
Yeah.
Now, I think the interesting thing about when, if you were in a triad with 2 people who were very early in comparison to thinking about impact from their research, I think the thing that we'd be saying to them to prevent the kind of imposter syndrome happening to them is your academic superpower is asking great questions. So ask Mark great questions. He will appreciate that. And I know you personally, so I know you would appreciate that. And that's the purpose of peer-to-peer, is to have those great questions going across without without the sort of, am I being judged by the tutor? Am I being judged by my head of school? Am I being judged by my director of research or director of impact if a school has one of those? Am I being assessed? And it's not, in those peer-to-peer conversations, we say, we're there if you want us to come in, but we only come in at your request. So it's the permission to come in, again, that is important. So I think that's where we manage to tailor when it's, when there's issues of different levels in the triads. Interestingly, the program that's running at the moment, there's a colleague, there's one colleague who's done a lot of work in the overseas development space with his research, and that's the area he's looking to do to expand his effect, his where he can grow. And so there's a similarity in terms of that sense, so that group has been put together. Now, the interesting thing for me is that although when you look at it, he's the most experienced, he's the one that's gone, oh, Winnie asked me an absolutely brilliant question and she helped me come up with the answer.
Brilliant.
Brilliant question. So I think there's just let's take all those views of where we are in career, or where we are in terms of impact journey, or whether we're whether a researcher or whether a member of professional staff. We can all ask questions. Some that are good and some that are not so good. We throw the not so good ones away, and we keep learning from the really good questions.
Great. So I'm getting a sense now of the level of peer support that happens in this, and this makes this quite a different program to your average training course, heavily tailored. Give us a sense of kind of where this goes. So we're coming towards the end of the 3-month period now. What are some of the outcomes that you're seeing from this, and how do they differ from just putting someone through a standard training course, like the kind of thing that I would do with them, for example?
Well, the most regular kind of message that keeps coming through from the evaluation of each program, people are just absolutely valuing that permission, that permission to talk about impact, that permission to explore impact, that permission to get it wrong as well, that permission to go and talk to stakeholders. We have a gap in the program, so webinar 1, webinar 2 are close together. Then there's a gap where you can test your thinking out with stakeholders, and we encourage that. And we ask questions about, what were the barriers, what were the enablers, what could we do differently if we had that 6-week period again. So we reflect on all of the stages of the process. So it's that permission, the fact that the permission has been, I'm sure none of these people have gone to their head of school and said, can I do this program? They've just gone, yeah, I want to do this program. So I'm only, I'm not giving them permission. It's just, here's a program. You can choose to do it or not. But the time gets put into their diary, and they think about the individual work. How much time am I going to devote to that in my diary around the sessions? So they can make those choices as well. So the permission to do it, and then the support, both peer and tutors. So coming back to that question, that thing in the consultation where I said the impact community, the support community, the professional support community was not as connected as it needs to be. We're using the impact community to deliver the program. So we ask for volunteers each program when it comes around. We're doing 3 at a time, 3 people at a time. So it as I said, it's pretty rich. 3 tutors, we're calling them, because we can't think of a better word, and I'm Ron Seal, as I've said. So 3 tutors to 15 participants. So there really is kind of like, you can get to the almost like one-to-one support. And if somebody can't make a webinar, we can fit that in. I'm seeing, we've got a webinar this afternoon. There's a person who can't make it. I'm seeing him tomorrow. And I know one of the other tutors is seeing one of the other participants later on in the week as well, because, again, they can't make it.
Apologies if that's me. I'm doing impact training at University of Leeds this afternoon, which would be rather unfortunate. So I really like this idea of permission with support, and I think there's something about the fact that this is a university program that means that people are less likely to feel that they need to ask permission from their heads of school. But there is this kind of university stamp of approval of, we want you to achieve impact. You can sign up to this, and we want you to make time to deliver on this. And so there's an accountability thing, I think, going on with this as well. And yeah, you make as much time as you feel you have or want to. But you're going to have to make some time for this, because the university is investing in this, and there is an expectation that you're going to at least put some time to this. So permission, accountability, and support. And I think permission and accountability is one thing, but unless you've got that support, you've got the knowledge, the tools, the skills, but also the people there at your back helping you problem solve, then you're not going to get far. And the time you're doing this over with that 3-month period means that it's not just an intellectual exercise. You get to actually try some stuff out with your stakeholders. And if things go wrong, you've got that support network of your peers and the impact team to help you pick up the pieces, adapt, try again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sense of team is again another one of the big messages that comes out of the evaluation regularly. The other kind of message is that people come in, especially those new to impact, come in going, thank God you bust the myth that all impact has to be big.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I'm just thinking of some of the writing in the impact agenda, Catherine Smith's et al.'s book, where they talk about, there's lots of engagement going on, some of which might lead to change, some of which might be reach and significance, some of which we might be able to underpin with our research, and therefore it fits with the ref. Now, what we're doing in the program is that we're saying to people, we want the engagement and we want the change. If the rest comes, great. But the university is valuing the engagement and valuing the change that emerges as a result of the engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there are layers to this, and one of the things I really like about this is this combination of people coming in with their own hopes, getting that support, that structure, and that itself. Then the program is built into your broader impact strategy. And so I guess what I want to get at here is this difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic. And the fact that you're valuing small impacts in inverted commas, these are usually not small for the academic. These are the things that matter most to them, that are most inspirational. But it's one community, one person, perhaps, something that's very hard to measure, something that is cultural, that's not economic, for example, that you might think that your funders might not be interested in, but actually that for you is far more important than some return on investment. So validating the fact that, you can follow your own instincts on this, do the things that are impact for you, whether or not your funders or the university or some evaluator is going to value this. I think that's really important. And so people, I guess, are drawn to this, and this. It helps people to make these intrinsic motivations explicit and to value them and to legitimize them, so that is what is driving their impact activity rather than the extrinsic incentives. But so I wonder, can you speak to that? But also tell me how this then fits with the broader framework, the broader strategy. And I assume that just because you've got this Building Impact Momentum, or BIM, program, doesn't mean you've now scrapped impact from promotions and all of these other extrinsic incentives that are within the broader context that this sits within.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. We haven't scrapped the impact that are in the promotions criteria. What we are doing, whether people are both on the applicant side and the panel side, we have got a piece of work coming up where are those being appropriately interpreted by both the applicants and the panel, both from that sense of, does it have to be big impact, kind of that sort of thing. Is it about us just valuing the engagement, so the effort and the commitment it takes to engage? So, for instance, we're running an impact awards this year. I've never been a fan of impact awards per se, because they tend to be almost another way of designing the ref, because usually those schemes are about measuring the outcomes. We're trying to consciously measure the activity in the as the key criteria in the award scheme. So it's actually valuing the effort and trying to provide systems at institutional level and faculty and school systems that support that effort.
Yeah, so what I really like about this is that you're saying, well, we've kept these extrinsic things. In fact, maybe even we're adding some new extrinsic things in, like an award, but we're going to adapt these to align them with something that is more consistent with the kinds of values that are typically driving our academics. And so, we've got impact in promotion criteria, and that is right. If we value this, we need to send that message. And yet that can be misinterpreted and enacted in ways that can be very instrumental. And how you got to force our impact case study. If not, you don't get promotion, that kind of thing. Let's make sure that we are getting this actually implemented well and beware of that. Let's have a prize, but let's not now encourage just again, let's take all the credit for all these incredible things and put our academics on a pedestal, when in fact there is this huge ecosystem of other people and organizations that actually delivered this, often including marginalized, vulnerable groups, etc., who are now continue to be marginalized. Well, we take all the glory. And a lot of academics, I think, like you, feel quite uncomfortable about the way that these kind of impact award ceremonies often run. So great. Let's integrate these, but rather than just say we've got top down and bottom up, and let's try and somehow mesh these. Let's actually think much more deeply about how we can revise our top down stuff at the institutional level to make this more consistent, so that they can genuinely integrate rather than clash with each other as they meet at the top down and the bottom up.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of developing the strategy and the implementation plan for the strategy, we've really tried to challenge ourselves to think in exactly the same way that we try to challenge our academic colleagues to think, what's the impact goal from this? What are you hoping for? And therefore, what's your theory of change or logic model that might take us towards that goal? Mm-hmm. So we've actually applied that same thinking to, okay, what is our impact strategy trying to do? What is it trying to achieve? What is our goal for it? And what is our logic to achieve that goal? Now, interestingly, a lot in the consultation for the strategy, we noticed that really the only conversations about impact again tended to be ref dominated, like, in terms of, oh God, it's coming, and oh God, it's horrible, or oh God, I'm a case study author. How did I get lumbered with this? So actually lots of negative conversations about it, negatively aligned conversations. So what we're looking to do is just to have more conversations about impact that might actually have that positive angle on it. Look, I hoped for this and I achieved it at some scale. It doesn't matter what the scale is, but it's an achievement. I've engaged. I've moved my engagement from nil to some. Those are all conversations that have a positive angle on them rather than a negative angle on them. And that's what we're constantly trying to do.
Yeah. So that's great, and as a result, then we begin to actually start not just changing the conversation, but something beneath that. We start to change the culture, and so I wonder. For me, this is an example of the kind of thing that we can do to start changing impact culture from the grassroots. And if you look at the framework that I've got in the book, we might think about this in terms of the capacity for impact, the leadership for impact, the structures around this, and clearly the stuff there. But I wonder if there are examples that you can talk to us about how this program is changing how people are actually doing their research, or building community, whether that's that triad, the cohort within Leeds or across into their stakeholder communities, or that sense of purpose that people discover or kind of re-engage with as they go through this process that centres and grounds what they're doing in terms of impact.
Yeah, so the other thing to say about BIM is that it's not just delivered across the whole institution. So BIM is happening at different layers. So a school might run a BIM, and it might be trying to just pick the people it wants to, who want that priority, that prioritization, if you will. So it might be, here's a new area of impact we're exploring, from a new area of research that we're exploring. So we need to really support these people to get that bottom-up move a bit more established. So as I said, it's happening at all sorts of layers. So the communities are kind of growing in lots of different spaces. So we've had them run at faculty level, we've had them run at school level, we've had them run across schools within the same faculty, and we've got them running at university level where it's completely mixed. We had, I'm trying to think of the most diverse group. We had a group looking at trying to impact different elements of the police and the police service, the service that the police offer. And I think we had people from 3 different faculties. Leeds has 7. In that triad, we had people from 3 different faculties,
Wow.
all wanting to, make some change to how the police, interact with society and legitimately police society. So I think there's all sorts of communities growing from it. We also, every participant that finishes a BIM gets invited to, it's another kind of Ronseal, maintaining impact momentum. So that's a series of sessions that we just put on, and those are really free formats. So we might have a conversation, we might have a success story or a not success story to learn from, being talked about by an ex-BIM participant. So we've got those going, and that community is growing. We share literature in that. So in that channel, again, we do it through a Teams channel. So we share new literature on impact and kind of debate that as well, in terms of does that help you in some way, so it's actually trying to do that translation for people from the literature to really on the ground action.
That's great. Carry on.
And just kind of finally, we were going to talk about school portfolios of impact, so I just wanted to kind of maybe bring that in at this moment in time and just say, one of the things we're rolling out this summer, which unfortunately is a bit of a kind of a responsibility for kind of, the poor old academic who has the impact lead in that particular school, is, hey, let's do it a slightly different way, rather than kind of you going across the top and sort of saying, what's my long list of ref case studies? Let's do it from the bottom. What are the things my colleagues want to change about the world around them? And let's have that conversation, and let's grow that conversation and see if we come up with a set of shared outcomes that we as a school, we as a community of scholars, a community of researchers can all buy into to some extent, because it comes from what we want to do rather than, it feels like if you do the what's my ref case study, it's almost like an imposition from above. Even though it probably isn't, but it can feel like that. So we're doing that, and then that should enable the school to think, okay, so which of these shared outcomes do we think needs some priority support? Because we can't, all the will in the world. We don't have infinite cash, and we don't have infinite professional staff resource. So where are we going to focus our efforts? And that's a negotiation again with the community of scholars, rather than it just being an imposition.
Yeah. So getting very practical here, and I'm busy thinking, I wonder what groups are there within my own university that are working across completely different faculties, but on very similar things. They want to see the same kind of change, or they want to help a particular kind of group, and it's all the same group, but they have no idea that there are other people in the same university all working on that same thing. Or just people who are working with the same organisation, and just strategically getting them together so that we're not contributing towards stakeholder fatigue and creating what might appear to be a very fractured and disconnected image of the university to that particular organisation, because we don't know what everyone else is doing. And so whether it's at a school level, whether it's at a research group level, or at the university level, this kind of bottom-up organisation of this, but based primarily on what is the change you want to see, and who are the people that you want to benefit from this, and can we then start bringing coalitions of the willing together, people who want to really see that change, who will therefore want to support each other, and then based on that, can we strategically prioritize the limited resource we've got and trust the communities we create to support each other where we don't have the resource to invest yet institutionally. So I guess we come to the end. I wonder, are there any other take-home messages or practical bits of advice that you can give that the people listening might be able to apply at whatever scale they might be working?
I think probably the take-home message for me is that the content of BIM is not complex. BIM, Building Impact Momentum, it always gets acronized at Leeds, unfortunately. So it's not complex content. What's complex is adapting to all those individual challenges that might come along, building the flexibility into it, and being, it's dead easy to feel annoyed when somebody says, I can't come this afternoon. There could be all sorts of really valid reasons for that. So, let's shelve that frustration and go, right, when can I support you? When is that time that you can't make this afternoon? When can we build in that time going forward? So I think the content is not complex. It's the going hand in hand with our academic colleagues and being their mate, and actually being together in that effort that is the complexity about it.
Yeah,
so I think that's where I'd leave.
And that is there for the long term. And well, I guess you and our relationship is testament to that. It is about being there for each other, supporting each other, whether that supports colleagues, whether that's peer-to-peer. It is remarkable what we can do when we bring communities together in this way. And I think what is great about this is the structure around this and how it foregrounds that support in terms of the relationships, which ultimately will inspire and enable our colleagues, giving them permission and support to go and achieve the change they want to see. Ged, it has been a real pleasure. I've loved hearing more about this. I can't wait to hear more and hear what other people think about this and get some discussion going with the broader community on the 25th. Again, if you want to join that in the show notes, you can book via Eventbrite. Would love to see you there. Loads of people booked already, so it's going to be fun. And Ged, thank you again.
No problem. I really enjoyed it. It's always good to have a natter with you.
It is indeed.